I'm Scrapbook Boxing. I want to continue the conversation about the conversations that I had with my dad around the scrapbook table. One day I walked into my dad's house. We had this ritual where I would visit him once a week, and then it became twice a week. He would pick me up from my mom's house and we would go to his house. We would start our day on a Saturday. About 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. One morning I raced into the house to go straight to the closet. Now, I'm 7 years old. Had already discovered that he had boxing memorabilia. So on the second shelf, I pulled out a big box. Couldn't wait to go through some of those articles. Box was a little too heavy for me, so my dad grabbed the box and he poured it on the table. He was just excited as I was. Now, a lot of these articles had paper clips because he wanted to keep the articles together. That was related to a specific fighter or a specific fight. And one of the paperclip articles was about a young man who would go out every morning in the summertime and he would bring out a shoe shine box, rag polish, a brush, and a bottle of change. And this was ritual for this young man. He would go out to the same corner every morning, about 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. But one day he would run into 5 boys. One of the boys' name was Leroy. Leroy was known as the neighborhood bully. And he would wear shiny pair of shoes. He would walk up to this young man and ask to get his shoes shined. The young man looked at his shoes, was wondering why he came to him. The shoes was already shined. And as he asked the question, "Where do you want me to begin?" Leroy would snatch the shoe polish, rag, and bottle of change from this young boy. Young boy would try and attempt to get his jar of money back. Leroy would shove him to the ground. Young boy would run home. He would be crying. He was living with his grandmother at the time. And on this day, his grandmother had a plate of food waiting for him. But when he came home sobbing, she wanted to know what he was crying for. He explained to his grandmother that a boy took his money. And before she would give him what she was going to give him in exchange for what she had waiting for him, she wanted to be crystal clear on what he was crying for. He said the boy took my money. She told him to go back out there and get it back. And since he refused, she told him to go in the back, take off his shirt, bring back that belt that was hanging on the door, and hand it to her. And when he did, his grandmother, in syllables, beat him half to death with the belt. Told him no walker runs from no one. See, this young man's name was Sidney Walker. His grandmother was 112 years old when she passed away. She had values. But his name was Sidney Walker. And she went by the motto, no walker runs from anyone. It wasn't just a metaphor. It was a Southern pride value that she would get as a young girl. And she told him, "Don't you ever come back crying because someone took anything from you. You stand up and you fight back." The next morning, Sidney Walker would go out to that same corner where he had a problem. He would find those young boys. He would challenge Leroy, who was the tallest of the four. He asked him if he wanted to fight him. And all the boys said, "Yeah, fight, fight, fight." And Sidney Walker hit him with a blow that Leroy never saw coming. As he landed to the ground, Sidney Walker jumped on top of him, punched him in the head. And Leroy's head slammed to the concrete. Sidney Walker went into the pockets of Leroy, grabbed a fistful of dollars, ran back into his grandmother's home, excited. Said, "I got my money back." This young man, Sidney Walker, would be later known as Bojack, from Augusta, Georgia. He was born April 1st, 1921. And as he got a little older, he would compete in battle royales, where he'd be blindfolded with 5 to 6 other boys. Some would be grown men. He found a technique that he would hide in the corner, stay low. Everyone that came near to him would reach up and punch him. And he would normally win those battle royales. He would still continue to shine shoes, as he would need change in his pocket. But he went to Holyoke, Massachusetts, May 1940. October 12, 1942, Bojack would face Jersey City's Terry Young, an established contender by this point in time. November 1942, he would knock out lightweight contender Ali Stoltz. He started getting somewhere at this point. So much so that he would face New Jersey's lightweight Tippy Larkin for the vacant New York Sacks version of the lightweight championship belt that was relinquished from Sammy Aingot when he would retire. He would smash Larkin in the 3rd round, New York's Madison Square Garden, December 18, 1942, and he would become the New York Sack lightweight champion of the world. April 2nd, 1943, Bojack would take on former world champion Fizzy Zivit and Triple Crown world champion Henry Armstrong. He would do this between February and March, both in New York's Madison Square Garden. May 21st, 1943, he would lose the crown in 15 rounds to Philadelphia lightweight Bobcat Bob Montgomery. November 19th, 1943, Bojack would regain his crown from Bob Montgomery, once again in New York's Madison Square Garden. Now, between January and February 1944, he would defeat Maxie Berger and Lulu Castellano. March 3rd, 1944, Bojack would take on Bob Montgomery once again. But this time he would lose in a rubber match. He would face Al Bummy Davis, New York's number runner, very rugged, but mob member. But Al Bummy Davis could fight. My grandfather told me stories about Al Bummy Davis because my grandfather was also in the number running business. Bojack would decision Johnny Greco, 1946. And he would knock out Sammy Aingot that same year. 1947, he would knock out Tony Gennaro, 4 rounds. Later that year, he would have knee surgery and be out the ring for 9 months. He would take on former, yet future welterweight champion out of Chicago. 1948. His name was Johnny Bratton. Now, let me tell you about Johnny Bratton for one moment. Johnny Bratton was known as the Honey Boy. He was born September 9th, 1927 in Little Rock, Arkansas. He died August 15th, 1993 in Chicago, Illinois. He stood 5 foot 10 inches and weighed 132.5 pounds to 157.5 pounds. Johnny Bratton had an imposter that would walk around Madison Square Garden, as they were called old-timers, into the ring. He would never go in the ring when they called his name. He would stay in the audience, and he would wave his hand from side to side. And when asked for autographs, he refused. You see, that was not Johnny Bratton. This happened in the 1990s. And they would eventually catch up to this young man, who actually looked like Johnny Bratton. But little did most people know, Johnny Bratton died a few years older. Johnny Bratton was the holder of the NBA welterweight championship crown. He would take on Charlie Fusari. Charlie Fusari would take on Sugar Ray Robinson. That would be Robinson's last welterweight title defense. They would fight August 9th, 1950. Robinson would move up to take on the middleweight contenders, as he would challenge the Bronx Bull, Jake LaMotta, February 14th, 1951. So meanwhile, Charlie Fusari would take on Johnny Bratton, and Bratton would defeat him and become the NBA welterweight champion of the world. Bratton would take on Lester Felton and Gene Hairston. New York's Madison Square Garden would develop the red blinking lights because Eugene Hairston couldn't hear and he couldn't speak. He was known as Dummy Eugene Hairston. Hit a man after the bell one day, and they would decide, after disqualifying Eugene Hairston, to reverse the verdict and develop red blinking lights. Bratton would take on Danny Bam Bam Wapner, Victor Cardell. Chicago, Illinois' Willie Joyce fought him twice. He was the former lightweight and the current welterweight contender. Willie Joyce took on Ike Williams, defeating him 3 times. Henry Armstrong and many others. What a puncher Willie Joyce was. Johnny Bratton would also take on Ralph Zanelli, Leo Klein, Leo Shane, turned professional in 1940 along with Ray Robinson, Jimmy Bivens, Ezra Charles, Ike Williams, and Willie Pep. Bratton would take on Laurent Dotil, who in 15 rounds almost became the middleweight champion of the world. See, the last 13 seconds, Jake LaMotta would knock out Laurent Dotil because he played possum up against the ropes. Jake LaMotta was behind on points. And all Lorenzo Tio had to do was stay away. But he couldn't resist. He thought he hurt Jake LaMotta and he wanted to take him out. And he got trapped. 13 seconds left for the round would end. He himself would be knocked out. Jadden would take on Pierre Langlois, one of the hardest punchers in that division during those days. Joe Maselli, Brooklyn, New York. He was fought world champion 7 times, as did Maxie Shapiro. Being in the ring with Cuba's Kid Gavilan 3 times. Johnny Bratton would fight several rounds with a broken jaw. Right after that, he would fight Burswick, Georgia's Trenton, New Jersey's Ike Williams. Fought him twice. At that time, he was the current NBA lightweight champion. Johnny Bratton would fight 9 rounds with Ike Williams with a broken jaw. As I continue examining these articles, I would realize that Johnny Bratton would also take on Sammy Ingot, Washington, Pennsylvania. Angar was the NBA lightweight champion twice in his career. Augusta, Georgia's Bojack twice. He would be a lightweight champion 2 separate times. San Bernardino's Albert Chalky Wright was a former featherweight champion. In Louisiana, Joe Brown, who would be a lightweight champion of the world. Called him Old Bones. He'd take on Chico Verona, Del Flanagan, Bobby Dykes, Johnny Saxton out of Newark, New Jersey. What a fighter Johnny Bratton was. But as for Bojack, he would face Trenton, New Jersey's Ike Williams, July 12, 1948. Williams would knock out Juan Zorita, Mexico City, in 2 rounds, and he would become the NBA lightweight champion of the world. But he couldn't celebrate his victory in the ring because he had soda bottles, half-eaten sandwiches thrown at him. Had to run to the locker room, and he would be presented with his belt there, as marvelous Marvin Hagler was when he became the middleweight champion in 1981. Ike Williams would knock out Bojack in the 6th round with 47 unanswered blows. He would have Bojack's head moving around like a piano. Bojack would wind up with a record of 112 total bouts. 84 wins, 40 knockouts, 24 losses, 5 draws, and he'd be stopped 4 times. Bojack, I had the pleasure of meeting him more than one occasion. He was something else. And he would famously say, "I'm a fighter. I'm here to fight. You want to fight me? You fight me. I'm not going to back up. I'm not going to run. You have to kill me right where you got me, because I'm here to fight." Shout out to Bojack. Johnny Bratton. Amazing fighters. Now, on the other side of the table, my dad would begin to work on another young man. His name was Louis Herbert Hardwick. He was born October 8th, 1891, Covington, Newton County, Georgia. He was part of the U.S. Navy, USS Cyclops. World War I. Home address was 148 Bedford Place in Atlanta. Louis Herbert would be lost at sea. His body was reported missing, but never found. Official death was counted 1918. He was just 26 years of age. Left behind a son named Louis Herbert Hardwick Arroyo. Born May 2nd, 1914 in Mayo West, Municipality, Puerto Rico. And he grew up and became a professional boxer at the age of 14. He would learn from his uncle by marriage, Edward Allen Robinson, who, by the way, didn't have any amateur background. But he was naturally gifted in more ways than one. After fighting several fights at the age of 15, May 27, 1929, he would take on a young man by the name of Kid Moon. And Senator Harry Durant of Connecticut happened to be in town for a convention and spotted this young man. He fought at the West Palm Beach, February 9th, 1932. He was very impressed with him. Decided to sponsor him, bring him back up to Connecticut. He'd be given the name Coco Kid. was a creative writer on the waterfront, featuring Marlon Brando. His name was Bud Schubert. He would give Louis Herbert Harper the name Coco Kid. And what was interesting, the same Bud Schubert would name 8 other young men and the issues and concerns that Coco Kid would have. He would name all these men. A group of the Black Murderers Row. Coco Kid would take on Holman Williams. Took him on a total of 14 times. 19 of those 14. Would also take on Charlie Burley. Now you had Jimmy Bivens out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Burt Littell out of Veronica, Texas. Lloyd Marshall out of Cleveland, Ohio. Elmer Violent Ray lived in Florida. Little Tiger Aaron Wade, Eddie Booker of San Jose, California. These articles became more and more interesting. My dad made about 20 pages in that scrapbook with these men alone. We learn about Leon Zarita. What a fighter he was. And then we would go to Gleason's gym. And at the front door, you had a young man by the name of Calvin. As you walked up the steps on Front Street, near the waterfront. And you would sometimes be greeted by Ira Becker, who was the owner of the gym at that time, R.I.P. to him, and Bruce Silverglade, who was part owner at that time. We had trainers such as Victor Valley, Hector Roca, Teddy Atlas, Al Gavin. You would see fighters such as Sandy Sadler and many others walk around in that gym at that time. But I remember hearing a story from an old-time fighter. I began shadowboxing. The old-time fighter interrupted me as I was warming up. He asked me, did I know who invented shadowboxing? And at that time, I didn't know. Had no idea. And since I just got started, he said, sit down, young man, I gotta explain something to you. He said it was a young man by the name of Little Chocolate. His name was George Dixon. He was from Nova Scotia, Canada. He was born July 29th, 1870. He died January 6, 1908. He was 37 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in New York. He stood 5 foot 3 1/4 inches, and he had a 69.5 inch reach. Said he had over 1,000 fights. And they would lock him up in Bellevue Hospital. And he went on to explain to me about the Carnival of Champions in 1892. September 6th, to be exact. Told me that George Dixon took on a man by the name of Jack Skelly, who was an amateur champion at that time. And George Dixon was defending his title in the featherweight division. Told me that George Dixon was hated so much by the establishment that he'd be kept in the middle of the ring with sticks and pikes and bricks. They didn't want him leaning on the ropes at all, because they did not want sweat from a black fighter sweating on their bodies. And for that reason, George Dixon became a zone fighter. He was able to fight in the middle of the ring. He was the first fighter in any sport to become champion. He was the first black fighter to win a title. Joe Gans was the first American black fighter to win a title. He would win the lightweight championship. But George Dixon was the first fighter to win a championship. He was credited for becoming a bantamweight and a featherweight champion. He was involved in over 50 battle royale fights and 2 fight to the death matches, which meant whoever would be the winner, last 2 men standing of battle royale, one man would have wraps placed around his forearms to his fist. They would soak it in glue, and he would have to shove it into a bucket of glass. Just one arm. Both men were blindfolded. And the fight wouldn't stop until another man didn't move. It was called fight to the death. He was in 2 of those contests. George Dixon was something else. He said, "Study your research, young man, and you will be something else." I would go back onto the heavy bag, skip shadowboxing by that point. Felt I was loosened up enough. But the following day, this old-time trainer saw me once again, and he would properly show me how to shadowbox. Those were the days of my conversations and activities with my dad around the round table as we were making scrapbooks. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Till next time, thanks for hanging in there with me.